Hi guys, Itai here. So, are you a dedicated flight simmer considering or actually making the move into real-world flight training? The sim does a great job providing you with some advantages, but it also comes at a price of a few unique challenges. In this video, I'm going to try and point some of these out from my experience being on myself, trying to learn, my peers, and as a flight instructor, watching some of my students. So, first, for the good points, or what are the built-in advantages you might have if you're a serious flight simmer who strives for professionalism going through flight training in real life? The first one I'd like to discuss is the instrument scan. So while you're flying, you should constantly move your eyes between the relevant instruments, letting your brain analyze what you're looking, what you're seeing. So there's some scan patterns you can practice. You can look them up and practice them. Could be the T scan, the inverted V, the radial scan, etc. And it doesn't matter whether it's steam gauges, glass cockpit, big airplane, small airplane, they always apply. So in the sim, you can practice them and your eyes become very, very versed in jumping from one instrument to the next, while your brain is becoming very, very accustomed to analyzing flight instruments, being the artificial horizon, the altimeter, the speed indicator, the airspeed indicator, etc. You're becoming very, very rehearsed in analyzing these things in real time, which is significant. A lot of real world pilots and flight students spend a lot of flight hours just practicing these, becoming proficient in them. And this is a fantastic tool you can have at your home and not spend a cent on. You can just get into the default flight simulator and practice scan patterns, and even just without knowingly practicing them, you're scanning, you're watching what altitude are we on, you're watching what heading are we on, what speed are we on, my where's my airplane going. That's a scan. So that's a very fantastic skill you guys can be very proud to already know, and that's a big step up. The next thing is flight planning. So it doesn't matter if you're not very much a professional yet. Being a flight simmer, trying to maybe plan a flight using any map tool that you see, Google Earth even, especially if you go to SimBrief or PFPX, you're planning flights, and in those flights that you're planning and flying, there's a lot of information that you need to consider. There's the responsibility of you as a PAC of the stuff you need to make sure exists in a flight plan. There's the weather minimums, the fuel requirements, the equipment requirements, drawing a navlog, understanding and applying the knowledge on aviation charts, airport procedures, etc. You've been doing all or some of these all along. You've been just practicing it. So then when you're actually going into real world flight training and you're trying to piece things together, you already know a lot of things. It's just about putting them in the right context and organizing it in a way that is acceptable to the level of tests. But you have a step up already, and that's significant. So don't forget this. It's instead of dealing with these very small techniques and technical stuff, you just need to kind of figure out what you already know and put them together, which is huge. Next thing I want to talk about is aircraft handling, in the sense that each airplane you've been dealing with in the sim, in any degree, in any extent, it has its own systems, limitations, procedures, flows, checklists, etc. You've dealt with a lot already. If you've been studying extensively any aircraft in your sim, especially study level add-ons for commercial jets, you've already handled a pretty complex airplane. Learning your training aircraft, so Cessna Skyhawk, Piper Cherokee, Diamond, Cirrus, would be a very simplified version. Treat it with the respect like any other aircraft. dive into the books, memorize limitations, emergency procedures, but do that knowing that you've already wrapped your head around a much more complex airplane as a hobby, nonetheless. So moving into a smaller one should be easy peasy. Another thing I want to talk about, and I've actually grouped it together, is ATC Communications as well as situational awareness. So whether you've been flying the stock flight sim, but especially using VATSIM, IVEO, or Pilot Edge with ATC and traffic around you, you've flown in an environment that A, has its own procedures, and B, there's other airplanes and controls that you need to consider. What are they going to do? What are they going to tell you to do? And how am I actively putting myself in the best possible way to do what I'm trying to do? So that's in real life. It takes a huge amount of brain power from students just to listen to the instructions from air traffic control, let alone understanding what the other aircraft are located and what are they doing at any given point. And you're already practiced in it in the simulator, and that's a lot of brain power that you can then divert to what you're actually trying to accomplish, flying the airplane well, doing the perfect traffic pattern, doing whatever you're trying to do. You're already a step up in practicing these vital environmental awareness factors. So kudos on that. So while all of these give you fantastic advantages, there are some things that you can expect to have some challenges in them. Just because the simulator doesn't necessarily give you the perfect training in, or it might even be a bad thing. So the first thing I want to talk about is hand flying. Hand flying in the sim is not really like flying an airplane in real life. Being, for example, the best example I can give you is like a racing game in PS5 versus actual driving. It just doesn't translate well. It doesn't give you the feeling. It doesn't give you the situation of where to look, how does it feel when you do things. And then the hand flying is just not really, you can practice it and get better at it in the sim, but it's not really the same. The feeling doesn't really convert. So that's a challenge you'd have to overcome while studying, while learning to fly in real airplane. Next things up is visual navigation. It kind of resembles the first point, being that it's really difficult in the sim to get that sense of where am I in the world, and that sense of direction and navigation, and looking outside and figuring out everything, all the visual cues around, and navigating solely based on them while also operating the airplane. It's kind of, you need a very comprehensive, very immersive experience in a sim. So you can kind of get to these points with good VR or surrounding yourselves with a lot of screens. But just know that it's not 100% true to real world feeling and navigation. So prepare yourself to maybe struggle a little bit, or having to work the skills a little bit that field. Moving on, I want to talk about regulations. So there's a lot of things that we do practice and we do while flying in the sim, which is fantastic. It does give you a step up. But some regulations, you simply don't know what you don't know. So some things you don't necessarily know to look it up, while an average student in private pilot certificate, let alone instrument and commercial or ATPL even, they go through very structured school system with air law classes. So they know the regulations pertaining to the different classes of airspaces, the equipment you need, the weather minima you need, and the different speed restrictions or limitations in such areas. I don't know, a whole bunch of regulations that's in real world training. You just go through the class and you learn them very methodically. In the sim, you might be doing things that you don't really know the nooks and crannies of each and everything that you study. So be prepared to really dive into things and try to get to all the things you've never learned so far and put them in the right context and get to them, because you simply don't know what you don't know. When things don't really go perfectly as planned. So in the sim, we do have, it's a fantastic tool to learn normal procedures for sure. And we can even choose to practice some emergencies, most times very deliberately. So it's not going to be the thing we do all the time, because the airplanes are simply perfect in the sim, right? So in the simulator, we need to deliberately know that we're going to let the airplane brake on us. We most times would know exactly what is going to break, what is going to be the failure or the malfunction. We know what weather conditions exist at the time, what day it is, what time of day it is. We know that we are refreshed. We just had our coffee and we're set up to do a fantastic training session in the sim. Not so much in real world. The real world, those things are not sexy. You know, if you have a V1, if you have a engine fire or engine failure at V1 while taking off from the runway, yes, it might present you with some handling challenges, but at the end of the day, there's no dilemma here. It's a straightforward thing that we practice all the time. But if you just, it's the end of a very long day, you're kind of tired, you just want to get home, and then you have this really annoying, very minor malfunction, and it's really, it at the beginning it's just bugging you, to be honest, and then you have another kind of related malfunction, and then the weather is deteriorating even further, and that's usually how you get yourself in an emergency. In the sim, obviously, you can just power it down and say, oh, you know, it's just everything is breaking, I'm not really feeling like flying anymore. That's in the sim. In real world, you kind of have to deal with that, and if you don't, that's how you end up, or even worse, if you're not even aware of these things gradually getting worse and worse and worse, this is how you eventually get yourself in a very, very tight corner. And that's in real world flight training, you learn how to incorporate procedures to mitigate these risks to begin with and deal with them as they emerge, including some on time, on point decision making processes. And that brings me to the last point, which is getting rid of bad habits. So while flying in the sim, you might have been very excited about trying a new airplane, trying a new technique that you've seen a YouTuber, this weird guy, that is flying all over the world in modern jets, and he claims he's a real world pilot, and he's trying some kind of procedure, and you want to try it too. You might be developing bad habits that you have not fully understood yet, those habits, yet you did not have an instructor at the time of learning them to really point them out, or point those risks out, or just slap you on the wrist and say, hey, you're doing something that's, I know you think it's nice and cool, but it's not really something you should do at this point of your career. So you might be developing bad habits you don't even know about, and it might be as simple as, not scanning very well the instruments while flying straight and level. It could be something else entirely. So that being said, if you already have a bad habit, I found on my students that it's a lot harder to get rid of a bad habit than to just learn something well the first time. So this is the biggest challenge, because you have been doing a lot. You might be the equivalent of a pretty experienced student pilot at this point, moving from the sim world to the real world. But you have developed some habits. Some of them are not good. Some of them you rehearse them a lot and you get better at them, thinking they're good for you, or even not even being aware of them. But now getting rid of them might be a little bit difficult. So set yourself up, get ready to really work on these things to get rid of them. So with all that being said, the transition from the simulator to real life flying gives you a step up above the average beginning flight student. And of course, making dreams come true is one of the most satisfying things you can do for yourself in life. That on its own is a great motivator to keep practicing using any tool you may have, and the home flight simulator is a very powerful tool at that. Just make sure you integrate it wisely and just stay aware of the limitations of things that are not exactly going to be helpful to you, and at the same time loving to fly and wanting to fly in any form and way that you can. So come home for work and the only thing that really calms you down is just go to the sim and do a nice cool flight on VATSIM, or just a scenic flight around Hawaii like we're doing now. That it just shows true love and passion, and that's a very powerful tool to keep getting better and better and better. So keep at it. Just know the limitations of this very powerful tool. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, additions, I'd be very happy to read them. And until next time, happy flying, everyone.